For more than a decade, a shadow crept across California. He slipped into homes in the dead of night, finding his victims, whispering threats, and vanishing without a trace. Entire neighborhoods lived in fear, families slept with guns under their pillows, and couples set traps around their homes. He was a burglar, a rapist, a killer. The media gave him many names: the Visalia ransacker, the East Area rapist, the original Night Stalker. But to those who survived, he was something far worse, an invisible terror that seemed unstoppable. For over 40 years, his identity remained one of America's greatest mysteries. And then in 2018, the mask finally came off. This is the story of the Golden State Killer. We'll break down his individual reigns of terror and go over his horrors in this video. Our story starts from November 9, 1945. Joseph James D'Angelo Jr. was born in Bath, New York, to a sergeant in the U.S. Army. He had two older sisters and a younger brother. A relative revealed that Joseph had seen the SA of his sister by two airmen in a U.S. Air Force Base warehouse. That left a mark in his mind. Investigations reveal that even in his teenage years, Joseph was very violent. He used to torture and kill animals for fun, commit burglaries, and steal mail. People around him had no idea that this violent kid would turn out to be one of the biggest nightmares for Californians. Joseph became a burglary unit police officer in May 1973 and served in Exeter until August 1976. Then, he served in Auburn from August 1976 to July 1979. He lost his job as a cop when he was arrested for shoplifting. Decades later, Joseph would admit to investigating burglaries during the day and committing them at night. While he was being arrested, Joseph had threatened to kill the chief of police. It's alleged that he even staked the chief's house. While he was a police officer, Joseph got married to Sharon Marie Huddle. They were married until 2018, when Joseph got arrested. Neither his wife nor his three daughters ever suspected him of being a criminal. Joseph wasn't your loner or someone living away from society. Part of what made him invisible was his normalcy. For everyone, he was an ex-cop with a small and happy family living your average American life. But for his victims, he was a monster. It was the early hours of spring, 1978, when Bob and Gay Hardwick woke to a blinding light in their bedroom. At first, they thought they were dreaming, but standing at the foot of their bed was an armed intruder, flashlight in hand. The young couple lived in a modest home in Stockton, California. Their back door's deadbolt had been broken for weeks. In the 1970s, few people imagined a reason to fear the night, but the man in their home would change that forever. He was one of the reasons America began locking its doors. What followed was hours of terror. Bob was bound tightly, dishes stacked on his back, so that even the smallest movement would give him away. Gay was dragged to the living room, where she was assaulted again and again. The intruder lingered. He raided their refrigerator, drank 2 beers, and ransacked their home, all while tormenting Gay with threats of death. Years later, she would testify. He ate from my refrigerator, and he drank 2 beers while I lay bound and blindfolded. He ransacked our home, and in between, he tormented me with threats of death. That night, Bob and Gay Hardwick joined a growing list of victims across California, all living the same nightmare at the hands of a man who would later be unmasked as the Golden State Killer. Before being called the Golden State Killer, Joseph was notorious as the Visalia ransacker. Many suspected that the Visalia was the training ground of the criminal named East Area Rapist, with crimes dating back to May 1973. The first recorded ransacking took place on March 19, 1974. In that case, the Visalia ransacker had broken into a home and stolen $50 in coins from a piggy bank. It was evident most of his break-ins weren't about money. Instead, he rifled through drawers, vandalized belongings, and scattered women's underclothes across the floor. He often stole low-value, personal items, single earrings, cufflinks, rings, medallions, while ignoring cash left in plain sight. Among the missing were piggy banks, coin jars, blue chip stamps, and even 6 firearms with ammunition. The ransacker also had a chilling habit, arranging or displaying items inside the homes he violated, as if leaving behind a message only he understood. By late 1974, his crimes escalated, 12 separate burglaries in a single day. Investigators began to notice patterns. Fences climbed, entry points forced open, and multiple escape routes left wide. Window screens were removed and placed neatly onto beds. Dishes and bottles were propped against doors, primitive alarm systems designed to warn him if a homeowner approached. And always, there were no fingerprints. The ransacker wore gloves, moving like a ghost through the neighborhoods he terrorized. September 11, 1975. The city of Visalia, California, slept quietly under the cool night air. But inside one modest home, terror was about to unfold. Claude Snelling, a respected journalism professor, woke to strange noise just after 2 a.m. He rushed from his bedroom, through the back door, straight into a nightmare. In his carport stood a masked intruder. At his side, Snelling's 16-year-old daughter, frozen in fear, subdued by threats of being stabbed or shot. Snelling confronted the man, but in an instant, the intruder raised a gun. 2 shots rang out. Snelling staggered back into the house, mortally wounded. He collapsed into his wife's arms as the attacker kicked and beat the girl before fleeing into the night. A stolen bicycle was found nearby, his only trace. The murder shook Visalia to its core. This was no longer just a burglar. This was a killer. Police mounted stakeouts, determined to catch him. A $4,000 reward was announced, but it was of no avail. The 16-year-old Beth Snelling underwent hypnosis to recall details of the incident, but even that didn't help. And then, just 3 months later, on December 12th, they came close. That night, a masked man crept into a backyard on West Korea Avenue. Detective William M. C. Gowan waited in the shadows. As he moved to arrest him, the suspect shrieked, a piercing cry, ripped off his mask, and feigned surrender. Then, with his left hand, he pulled a revolver. A single shot shattered M.C. Gowan's flashlight, missing his face by inches. Officers rushed in, but the intruder vanished into the dark, leaving behind blue chip stamps, a sock filled with coins, and his flashlight. The Visalia ransacker had escaped once again. His crimes had crossed the line, from terrorizing homes to taking lives, and he was only just beginning. After terrorizing Visalia, D'Angelo moved to the Sacramento area in 1976. He had already escalated from burglary to murder. Now, he was going one step further. December 18, 1976. 15-year-old Chris Pedretti was home alone in Sacramento while her parents attended a Christmas party. At 6 p.m., as she played the piano, the sound of music was cut short by a man in a ski mask pressing a knife to her throat. "Do what I say, or I'll kill you and be gone in the dark." Those words would later become the title of Michelle M.C. Namara's book on the Golden State Killer. For more than 2 hours, Pedretti was terrorized. He assaulted her repeatedly, forcing her outside into the freezing night air, then dragging her back inside to different rooms where the nightmare continued. At last, he left her on a couch in front of the fireplace, blindfolded, bound, and broken. When she realized he was gone, Chris freed herself and ran to her neighbors for help. But the trauma didn't end there. She later recalled the crushing humiliation of that night, not only from the attacks, but from the questions police asked her. A terrified 15-year-old about intimate details she didn't know how to answer. And then again, during the invasive medical exam, Chris would call these experiences her second and third victimizations. That night, the East Area rapist had claimed another victim, but he had also left behind a survivor, one whose courage would one day help tell the world his story. Joseph DeAngelo's attacks followed a chilling pattern. At night, he prowled quiet, middle-class neighborhoods, searching for women alone in one-story homes. He chose houses near schools, creeks, and trails, places that offered him a quick escape into the dark. Neighbors often reported seeing a prowler, but whenever anyone gave chase, he always slipped away. On one occasion, when a young man tried to stop him, DeAngelo shot him, seriously wounding his pursuer. He planned every attack meticulously, studying the routine of his victim, learning about the neighborhood, and even breaking into their homes multiple times before the attack. Most of his victims recalled unsettling signs before the attacks, strange noises outside, footprints in their yards, even break-ins where nothing of value was taken. Police would later determine he had been watching them, studying their routines. He looked into windows, lurked in backyards, and sometimes even broke in ahead of time to prepare the scene, unlocking windows, unloading guns, or planting ligatures he would use later to bind his victims. And the terror often began long before the night of the assault. He would telephone his targets, sometimes for months in advance, calling again and again, learning their schedules, letting them know that someone was watching. You would hope that Joseph would stop, but as he committed more crimes, his hunger only grew more. After a while, Joseph DeAngelo's pattern of violence evolved again. At first, he targeted women alone or women at home with children. But when newspapers reported that he never attacked couples, he changed his methods. Maybe he wanted to break the pattern, or maybe he just wanted to prove that nobody is safe, whether they live alone or with family. Soon, he was breaking into homes where couples slept. His entry was almost always the same, slipping silently through a window or sliding glass door, then snapping a flashlight on it in the dead of night, its beam blinding his victims away. A handgun in his other hand ensured their obedience. He bound his victims with ligatures, often shoelaces, sometimes forcing the woman to tie up her partner before he tied her himself. The knots were pulled so tight that victims' hands would remain numb for hours after they were free. Then came his signature cruelty. He would stack dishes on the man's back, warning that if he heard them rattle, everyone in the house would die. With the threats set in place, he dragged the woman into another room, usually the living room, where the assaults began. During one attack in 1978, his 37th known assault, he reportedly muttered again and again, "I hate you, Bonnie," the name of his former fiancée, and he never rushed. DeAngelo often lingered for hours, ransacking drawers and closets, raiding refrigerators, drinking beer, assaulting his victims again, and issuing fresh threats. Sometimes he would vanish into silence, long enough for his victims to believe he was gone, before leaping suddenly from the shadows once more. His presence was like a nightmare that refused to end. One other notable attack by Joseph DeAngelo was on the Maggiore couple. 21-year-old Brian Keith Maggiore and his 20-year-old wife Katie Lee Maggiore were walking their dog on the night of February 2, 1978 in Sacramento. They were walking in the area where Joseph had committed 5 attacks. The couple was confronted by him and later chased down, shot to death. In 2020, DeAngelo pleaded guilty to the killing of this couple. This was another escalation in Joseph's crimes. By now, he had moved on from assaulting women. He was after blood and began killing people in Southern California. In 1979, authorities had no idea that the Visalia ransacker and the East Area rapist were the same person. They also didn't think that he would increase his reign of terror in Southern California and become the Night Stalker. Few realized at the time that 2 predators were operating in California. D'Angelo's killing spree predated the crimes of Richard Ramirez by 4 years. To separate the two, he would later be renamed the original Night Stalker. Between 1979 and 1981, D'Angelo admitted to killing 9 people, continuing his terrifying pattern of breaking into homes and slaughtering couples as they slept. Years later, detectives would connect 4 more murders from the early 1970s to him. Then, suddenly, the terror stopped. For 5 years, Southern California slept easy. Police wondered, had the killer died? Had he been arrested under another name? But the nightmare wasn't over. In May of 1986, the Golden State Killer struck one final time, brutally murdering 18-year-old Janelle Cruz inside her Orange County home. Her family had gone on vacation in Mexico, leaving Janelle alone in their Orange County home. The house was up for sale, and days later, a realtor arrived with a prospective buyer. What they found inside was a scene of horror. Janelle's body lay on her bed, beaten so severely she was barely recognizable. Her injuries were brutal. Her teeth had been forced into her own hair and even into her lungs. Investigators believe the weapon was a heavy pipe wrench, reported missing by her stepfather. It was his last known crime. And then he vanished into the shadows. From committing heinous crimes, Joseph D'Angelo allegedly contacted the police department, the victims, and the media multiple times. In December 1977, a man claiming to be the East Area R-Piss called the Sacramento Police Department, saying, "You're never gonna catch me, East Area R-Piss, you dumb F-skurs. I'm gonna F-CK again tonight. Be careful." In another incident, a man called Sacramento authorities saying, "I am going to hit tonight, Watt Avenue." Investigators identified him to be the same man who made the previous calls. Patrols increased that night in the hopes that they might catch the perpetrator. A masked man was seen on Watt Avenue Bridge that night, riding a cycle, but he succeeded in escaping from their grasps. On multiple occasions, D'Angelo called his victims, telling them he will kill them or remind them of what he had done to them. During the investigation of D'Angelo's 42nd victim, police discovered a few pages dropped near the crime scene. The sheet contained journal-style writing. It mentioned a punishment the writer received in 6th grade, where the teacher made him write multiple lines. Behind that note was a weird map with punishment scrawled all over. Even with his writing at hand, and so many crime scenes, authorities weren't able to catch Joseph D'Angelo for decades. But how exactly did this elusive criminal get caught? And why wasn't the police able to apprehend him for so long? For decades, the Golden State Killer vanished into silence. But in 2016, the FBI reignited the hunt, releasing new composite sketches, new crime details, and announcing a $50,000 reward. They also created a national database to gather tips, hoping someone, somewhere, held the key. That key would come from science. Using genetic genealogy, investigators uploaded the killer's DNA into GetMatch, a public ancestry website. The results pointed to distant relatives, family lines stretching back to the 1800s. From those connections, genealogists built more than 24 family trees, one of which contained nearly 1,000 names. Piece by piece, they eliminated suspects by age, gender, and location until only one man remained: Joseph James D'Angelo. In December 2017, a team led by Detective Paul Holes and FBI lawyer Steve Kramer focused on it. Working alongside genealogist Barbara Ray Venter, they narrowed the tree down to just 2 suspects. One was ruled out. That left D'Angelo. In April 2018, investigators moved in. They secretly collected DNA from the handle of D'Angelo's car, and later, from a tissue found in his curbside trash. Both samples came back with the same result: a perfect match. After more than 40 years, the Golden State Killer had finally been unmasked. On the evening of April 24, 2018, deputies closed in. Joseph James D'Angelo was arrested outside his Sacramento home, ending one of the longest manhunts in American history. He was charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder. More charges followed in the weeks ahead. After decades of silence, the Golden State Killer was finally in custody. But behind bars, D'Angelo revealed a bizarre, fractured confession. Speaking to himself in an interrogation room, he muttered about an inner personality he called Jerry, claiming Jerry had forced him to commit the crimes. "I didn't have the strength to push him out," he whispered. "I destroyed all their lives. So now I've got to pay the price." Although the statute of limitations had expired for rape and burglary, prosecutors charged him with 13 murders and 13 kidnappings. The case was massive, spread across 6 counties, expected to cost taxpayers millions and last a decade. Prosecutors sought the death penalty, and the world prepared for a trial that would finally bring justice to D'Angelo's victims. Then, in June 2020, he struck a deal. In exchange for avoiding execution, D'Angelo pleaded guilty to 13 murders and 13 kidnappings. On August 21, 2020, Joseph James D'Angelo was sentenced to multiple consecutive life terms, without the possibility of parole. The Golden State Killer, once a faceless predator who stalked California's suburbs, would spend the rest of his life in prison. After committing more than 13 murders, 120-plus burglaries, and countless assaults, Joseph D'Angelo stopped one day. However, it took the authorities 3 decades to finally catch him, while he is in prison now. His victims are still haunted by the memories of his attacks. Hopefully, they can sleep peacefully knowing this monster is finally behind bars. The Golden State Killer's chapter is now closed, for good. What are your thoughts on this case? Why couldn't the authorities catch him before? Share your theories in the comments. Please like and subscribe to get more such content. Thanks for watching.